Please turn off your mobile phones.
Hello, yeah. Oh, that's me. Go for it.
Okay, let me introduce you Michael Mix, and his talk is LibreOffice turns 10 and what's next. Please, after Michael finished his presentation, don't run away and wait until question session end. Thank you. Michael?
Thank you very much. Excellent. So, I'd love to encourage you to all move closer and enjoy the proximity of being next to each other in this lovely auditorium, but perhaps not this time. Anyway, so this is what I'm going to talk about, so I won't tell you about that. Here we go. So 10 years, or 20 years. Amusingly, LibreOffice has been growing in conjunction with FOSDEM for 20 years, and so we're very just thrilled to be able to celebrate our 10th or 20th, depending how you look at it, or 35th anniversary at the same time that FOSDEM is, so just fantastic. And yeah, was it, I'm sorry, 45, 35? It's a long time, 1985. Yeah, 35 years. So Marco Burrius, a wonderful guy, a teenager working in his garage. You have to be careful about garages, don't go in. You may come out with an office suite, So he releases this, and at this stage, this time, it's really just a word processor, Star Writer. But it gets the dibs, it beats Microsoft Office by, nearly 5 years. So that's all good. This is the 93 version, and just a word processor. And you need to understand the world at this time. All sorts of interesting things were happening. So a spreadsheet was created which was called Quattro Pro. I don't know if you know why. But Lotus created something called 1, 2, 3. And so Borland created something called 4, which was, it was a friendly time. And we lived in a diverse industry, not dominated by one monopoly, which was fantastic. And at this point, Lotus was suing Borland about the structure, sequence, and organization of menus. So, nothing like today, obviously. And anyway, so these are some great quotes from Philip Kahn, the Borland co-founder, prehistoric, anything 20 years old and over. I don't know if any of you are over 20, but I am. And it's good to know that the facelift isn't going to do it, But Philip was particularly interested, and a good exemplar of the excitement at the time about revolutionary programming language change, Object orientation would make everything wonderful. Everything would be 10 times quicker and more beautiful. We would develop so amazingly rapidly. Software would become easy to read, easy to handle. It was absolutely amazing. And Philippe told so many people this. You even get the New York Times explaining, this radical new innovation. So here are some great quotes from him. Creating the initial objects is difficult, especially for programmers. And so you can see some of the Pascal programmers that came into OpenOffice in the time, or StarOffice, and did the one big class approach, Yeah, sure, it's object-oriented, why not? One class with 1,000 methods that does everything. But ultimately, the payoff will be faster, less costly development of new programs and updates. Wonderful. Mr. Gates has an interesting quote in the same article. If it's so great, why are their products so late? And I think that's a really great question. Careful of panaceas. Anyway, back at this time, Marco is I guess, in this era of excitement around object-oriented programming. And so he creates a visual class libraries, a new way of creating toolkits that will make applications trivial to write. And so, well, he tries to sell this toolkit, but the demo apps, it turns out, are the thing that most interests people. He creates these Office apps. And actually, in the end, he then ends up refactoring and creating these Office productivity suite out of his Visual Class Library project, which is brilliant. I think these days they call this a pivot. There's a posh term for it, but absolutely brilliant. So he went back to the Office business. He created StarOffice 3, which completely rewrote this. So it even ran on OS 2, which is fantastic, and Spark, and directly competed with Windows and Office 95, as it were. And this is the code we're built on today. It's still the skeleton of that, some of that design. And why is that interesting? Well, it turns out that object orientation is not a panacea And it's a different way of arranging your code and your data, and that's good. There are many benefits to it. But the problem is when you sit down and you design your object hierarchy based on what you see, you don't necessarily get a very good design. So you see cells in spreadsheets, so well, that has to be an object. Everything I can see should have an object, Yeah, that's not necessarily a good idea. Smalltalk popularized this approach, I guess. Every integer should be an object. But, well, anyway. Say paragraphs, tables should be objects. The problem is that this really screws up change tracking. So it was really very well understood how to create good Office suites back in the day when these decisions were made, and almost none of these insights were taken into account. Another cool thing about object orientation, of course, is encapsulation of information. So wouldn't it be nice if your file format just serialized all these objects and they stored their internal state and all would be well? Oh dear. Well, roll on 20 years, and some of those initial object hierarchy decisions turn out not to have been the best ones. And the problem is, when your file format is essentially a serialization of your object hierarchy, you have a real problem. So what was done was copying and pasting the whole Office suite at the point that it could generate XML files into a duplicate Office suite, which we called the bin filter. And this kept the old object hierarchy, loaded your file, saved it as ODF, reloaded it as ODF into the main Office suite. And we finally managed to get rid of this, like 5 years ago, which is quite good going. And this then freed us up to, undo some of these stupid things. So spreadsheets, for example, massive refactorings of the core there, totally restructured the data. A cell is not an object, it's a set of complex data structures that describe styles and formatting, and and if it's got a number in it, if you have a column full of doubles, it is at root a contiguous span of doubles. If you want to sum them, you can do SSE optimized sum. You can parallelize this. You can deal with the data in a meaningful way. That's simply not possible with the object approach. And similarly, writer, the problems of trying to do change tracking with tables and all of these different objects, just incredibly problematic. And so Michael Stahl for Zib has been doing some great work there that's shipping now to try and turn this into a view state. So previously, when you pressed a key, it would actually mutate the model to what it thought it should be, and then put the key in and then mutate it again. So if you weren't showing change tracking, it would actually literally edit all of your redlining in and out of the document every keystroke, which is kind of uncool. Anyway, so OpenOffice. So how did this happen? Well, this is the heady days of FLOSS being the panacea. Open source will fix everything. It's fantastic. And I'm a big free software lover myself. So but I think Larry Ellison says, open source is going to kill proprietary software. The mini computer will kill the mainframe. Larry, who's not a man I approve of generally, but he says, he's been in this industry a long time, and watching the mainframe die is like watching a glacier melt. Even with global warming, it's going slowly. They're still there. Anyway, but so FLOSS. Our mission is to drive FLOSS and make it rule the world, but we need to think about ways to speed that up. So anyway, some by Startervision for less than the cost of the licenses it was paying, reputedly. And Marco is then a VP of whatever, and he open sources StarOffice, which is absolutely fantastic. And a really good thing to do. So he did this talking to Miguel and Nat, who were doing a lot of GNOME stuff at Ximian, working on evolution, mail client stuff. And so actually there was some kind of compromise whereby GNOME kind of de-emphasized its Office suite, and they got rid of their mail clients, and life was happy. We all worked together in a glorious new world. Unfortunately, in terms of attracting developers, the guy who wrote the build instructions for OpenOffice was a non-developer who apparently hadn't done the job. He just cargo culted some rumors he'd heard from here and there. And when they came to attracting developers, the goal of a dependency graph of OpenOffice was to terrify you, rather than to try and teach you anything, it seems, So actually, it's not really that difficult, there's complexity, there's 8 million lines of code, but it's not the madness that you can try and make it look like if you really go for it. Another fun thing about OpenOffice was the development process. So inside the team of, 50, 100 developers, there was a great development methodology, which was this. You could do something fun, in your base library. You could rename a method for no apparent reason, or change the order of parameters, or something like that. And then you would simply send an email to all of your colleagues saying, well, I did this. Please go and fix your code. Before moving on to doing another similar thing. And the problem with this, of course, is that the code never actually builds. Of course, you commit your code as well, right? So your code goes in, and everyone else has to try and catch up. And unfortunately, platform and API churn rapidly overwhelms the ability of anyone to do actually anything up here, because it's all breaking down there. And yes, of course, there's a panacea to fix that. Just rewrite it all in another language, and then, So the build tree was in a permanent state of brokenness. And so they had release engineers whose job was effectively to branch the tree every 2 weeks, or as soon as they could actually build it. It usually took that sort of time. And then they would try and include all the fixes that would actually make it build. And at the end of this, they would do a day or two of building on CPU time, and then they'd give everyone binaries that they could build on top of for their next extravaganza of API change and improvement. So one of the corollaries of this is the top commit count people in the world, if you look in OLO, are the release engineers that merged everyone else's patches. They're just, they're just outstanding. So just to reflect on this sounds like a ridiculous situation where the people who maintain the platform can rapidly change it and break everyone that works on top of it. That's a mad way to develop software, isn't it? Well, welcome to Linux. Fantastic. Everybody in the base system has brilliant ideas for improving things at the bottom, and the great news is that everybody that builds on top of them gets to live with this. And, so let me encourage you to keep your APIs stable and your ABIs stable, and to live with the pain. Because although removing the option of having threaded users of your toolkit seems like a nice cleanup that removes 20 or 30 lines out of GTK, just to pick an example, it totally screws LibreOffice and everyone that ever wrote a macro, potentially. So, it might be nice to see the
Hello. See the suffering you inflict on others before you, do it, I guess. So anyway, it took me a month to get my first build. I'm obviously an idiot. But with a whole lot of fixes, which I quickly upstreamed, I managed to get it to build. And, you could then update it, and then it would break again completely for weeks. And there was never anything that you could actually be sure would actually work. So I created this thing called OOBuild, and based on Frederick Crozat's work, and suddenly all the Linux distributions used it. Fantastic. And the good news was that, a day into your build of wall clock time, it was at least not intended to fail. At least someone else had built it and thought it should work, which is kind of good. Build times have improved, but we're still at, an hour a minimum. And so there were some serious strains there. I mean, at the time, I visited a conference in the UK, and everywhere I went, I found frustration. There were people holding up placards like this. Don't mandate incredibly burdensome process just to fix simple things. Don't force people to have a team that they have to join with a product owner and a spec writer and a UX designer and a QA person, blah, blah, blah. Why not just, let things actually carry on? Try and avoid the bugs, piling up, and yes, actually fix some would be nice. Contributor agreements. Well, when do you think Fedora dropped the requirement for a contributor agreement that assigned copyright to a wonderful company, Red Hat, right? So don't keep people out of the project when we don't need to. It's very difficult if you're the majority contributor, not to include others. But LibreOffice, of course, tried to fix this. And then there's just the cultural problems. I don't know if you know people who are like this. Every solution has a problem that means you can't even think of doing it, and it gets a bit much after a while. And yeah, I don't want to mischaracterize the starter vision. There were really, many of these burdensome process things were not just for the community. They were just like corporate culture projected outside. And there were some real heroes there that tried to make the community a fun place to be by doing the burdensome process themselves. And they're just absolutely fantastic. So, but there was serious cultural problems here. So, LibreOffice, well, here we go. So during the LibreOffice conference in Budapest, the OpenOffice conference, we managed to bundle everyone else in the conference off on a boat on the river. And had you been on the boat, you would have noticed that these people weren't there. They were at a separate restaurant, plotting. And so by September the 2nd, we'd come up with a plan and had a nice meal to boot. And interestingly, almost all of these people are still involved in the project today, which is fantastic. Some of them as full-time staff, almost all of them still doing wonderful things. Which I think is a testament to how fun this can be. But yeah, so we had a good time there, and in less than a month we would have released LibreOffice. And of course, at this point you need to call in all your favors when you're starting a new risky project. There are a lot of people that you've met at FOSDEM and elsewhere and programmed with that you have to go and encourage to do something risky. So this was the management stack in Red Hat, and this was SUSE, and these are two main external contributors to OpenOffice. And here's one of the, I anonymized the company that was having problems, because frankly both of them were, It was really much, after you, no, after you, this sort of thing. Is this going to be a success? How can we tell when I'm this guy at the top? And to be fair, these are really cool guys. You'll never have, well, maybe you've not heard of many of these people. Probably you should do. But, the problem was that we'll do it if Google does. We want something to, so we had PR agencies lined up, corporate backing, and then Red Hat and SUSE, backed this extraordinarily helpfully. So 10 days to launch, I sent an email like this to Chris DeBoner and Jeremy Allison, who's here, which is cool, at Google, saying, quick, we need help. Please, can you give us a double rainbows and ponies, sort of thing, or just any kind of vague commitment that we can use to bounce this along. The bit that perhaps you missed here is that much of the plotting was done entirely without any backup, and then you go and ask for it, when it's all on the edge, of course, something real happening there. Well, 10 days to launch. I think this is a good sign, So yes, 7 days before launch, they come up trumps, So Google is proud to be a supporter of the Document Foundation, which doesn't exist yet, and is run by a whole load of kids, right? And participate in the project. A resounding endorsement. Bingo, unlocked everything. So in terms of getting people to line up and sign up, this is just absolutely wonderful. And so I think, Google played perhaps an unsung but extraordinarily helpful a process of getting everybody on side, of doing that, some kind of due diligence over a beer, in a community room somewhere, and making it fly. So yeah, then we didn't have a logo. Well, so Christophe Noack is an awesome guy who was one of the early plotters, as you can see. And we were playing around with lots of different logos. My friend Larry Ewing created Tux, actually, a programmer. Not really a designer. He drew the Tux logo. And then he wanted to draw the Zimian logo after we'd spent a fortune on outsourced design agencies to try and make a logo, all of which sucked. And he's like, I just, Anyway, so it turns out Christophe created this. Yeah, help me improve it. I'm not experienced in graphics design, I know some, but actually, if you look at Wikipedia and you look at the logo article, I think someone's got a sense of humor there. This is the example of the minimalist logo, and IBM is next to it. And what can you do? It's a pretty cool and visually distinct brand. And then, of course, we needed builds, so everyone's panically creating builds, synchronizing them to our mirror brain network so we can cope with the downloads bandwidth. So Peter Pummel created that and was involved with this. Getting the infrastructure set up, the Git repository with a website in it late at night, craziness, blah, blah, blah. Bingo. The 28th. Here it is. And so we have, Vive la LibreOffice, Novell, Red Hat, and lots of other people then come in, Richard Stallman and Mark Shuttleworth. The OSI, Simon is, of course, still involved with LibreOffice, GNOME, NeoOffice, BROffice. BROffice is interesting because it had a powerful brand in Latin America, and all of those guys could move across straight away to us. And so our very first release looked like that, and hopefully you can see some degree of brand continuity, let's say, from the initial release. So then there was a whole load of work, like it was amazing. Loads of people arrived. And actually, before I talk about that, I just want to talk about how we structured the community. So my experience of working in free software has not been, prior to LibreOffice, has not been one free of conflict, let's say. It was routinely my experience that not only would there be 4 or 5 duplicate approaches to anything, say window managers in GNOME, like written in every conceivable language, Lisp, C++, Haskell, whatever. But they would actually fight each other quite viciously for user share, mind share, market share, and they would not talk to each other either. They would certainly not tell them what they were going to do in the future. Disclose anything. And so actually, it's like cats fighting in a bag, almost everywhere. And this is pretty depressing. And it sometimes got personal. Oh, don't talk to him. He's the bad guy. Oh, yeah, you want to watch. And all these coalitions would be built. And then the mailing list would arrive, and they'd fight tooth and nail on the mailing list as well. I speak from experience as one who used to fight tooth and nail on mailing list. Anyway, if you read all of the literature on conflict resolution, using email to resolve conflicts is a reliable way of making everything worse. Okay? Like this is kind of easy. They tell you something like this the first day in HR, and yeah. So it's absolutely ridiculous. And of course, giving control and ownership and like this maintainership where you own something and it can be taken from you and you've got to fight to hold onto it and so on. Ah, dear, it was absolute nonsense. So we, from the very beginning, had phone calls for the engineering steering committee in whom everyone was peers. They were all the right people, all the people doing the work. Of course, if you have a respected expert in calc and someone who works somewhere totally different telling them what to do, everyone's going to give them a pretty hard stare, right? You need to respect experts, but yeah, no one owns modules. But of course, this is a bit of a problem for people that don't speak English, like I do. And so what we do is we live transcribe the meeting. So as people speak, it's written down, so everyone can follow and get involved. And so in at least the technical sphere, there have been, as far as I'm aware, no instances of conflict, no significant duplications of anything, and everybody has worked reasonably happily together. So, yeah, it's just a blissful experience, LibreOffice. If you want to work in a project where it's fun and there's not massive conflict, come and see us. Anyway, so what do we do? Well, GNU Make. We made the build system easy to use. We fixed a whole load of coverity defects. We did systematic crash load testing. Interestingly, we were always told that we were the dirty hackers that didn't know what they were doing, and they were the professional developers with our I-teams and process and so on. But we just fixed so much junk in the code base over time. It's even fully translated now, the code base. Unit testing, from not existing at all to starting to be quite significant. Automated performance regression testing running in Valgrind. The cache grind is a wonderful tool, and it's wonderful for one reason, which is that over years of development where nothing changed, this line is flat, completely flat. There's no jitter. So you can see from commit to commit, you didn't cause a regression, even a small one. Proper crash reporting, fixing that. Code quality improvement, we threw every tool at it we could find, pretty much, and people were willing to fund. Probably the best is OSS Fuzz, Google's thing there using AFL and Clang, but just lots of other stuff. And what you discover is that as soon as you introduce a new tool, Coverity say, there's a massive burst of fixing, and then it tails off. And so you think, oh, we're brilliant, we've fixed everything. And then you introduce another one, it finds a different set of problems, and we fix those. So here's the active commit account. So it's a bit dodgy before we use Git, but you can see various historic things here. So Sun was bought by Oracle at this point, so you can see the things happen there. SUSE decides to exit a LibreOffice and does it beautifully cleanly, and you can see it tapers slightly, but they then spin out Calabra and put some staff in there and some funding to create the company I run, which is great. Sib comes out of SUSE a bit and starts to do some stuff. This screen line, you can see, so you can see all sorts of things there, and you can also see Oracle disappearing. Bingo, suddenly gone. And you can also see the magnitude, that we managed to recover the project and keep it alive despite the sudden loss of staff. Native languages, like 145 used languages, 4,500 plus users doing translation. Fantastic work there. Thank you for all who do that. And of course, we would regularly meet up. FOSDEM was, just wonderful. FOSDEM, the support of the open source community made this make this fun, It was nice to come and talk and tell you the stories of what we were doing, give you USB keys with the code on it, help you get started, get people's first hacks done, plug the thing into the laptop, transfer it, get their first commit in, and so on. At some stage, I went around collecting scalps. Leonard Pottering has a commit in it, Greg KH. Like we have a number of people who so come and see me if you want to get your first commit in. We'll find something for you. And of course, conferences all over the place. The first one, we were not good at taking pictures, as you can see. But we got better and better, and, lots and lots of people over the years working on this. SusaCon is next. Oh, it works again. Fantastic. Excellent. And then I'm just going to flick through these. I'm going to flick through these very, very quickly. VBA, yes. So I'm going to flick through these quickly, and I'm not going to tell you anything about them, because the purpose of these features is not the features. But anyway, GStreamer, auto shapes, making smart artwork nicely, ranges on text comments, massive RTF improvements, docx annotation, CMIS integration, XML importing, conditional formatting, icons, everything, stock option pricing, Android remotes, beautiful Android remotes, iOS remote controls, Libre logo for education, improved image scaling, all sorts of left to right fixes for our Arabic and Israeli friends, templates, prettier previews, widget layouts so you can dynamically size and adapt for language and make the UI look pretty, reworking every user interface dialog, all 800, 900, 700 of them plus, to use proper layout language, and native platform widgets using the toolkit, CSS animations, beautiful stuff, Unity integration, GNOME 3 integration, personas to make it pretty, new trend lines, character borders, Cipher, new icon themes everywhere, start screens making it look pretty, Windows integration, policy management, group management, lockdown, a Firebird so you can rid ourselves of the last Java pieces, ultra-fast calculation using your hardware, prettier branding, selling T-shirts everywhere, formula wizards. You can go to our booth, I'm sure, and get one of these. Multi-threading support, actually using the rest of your hardware that's not used. Improved statistics, better Impress, a sidebar, prettification, and so on. Better transitions, much better Impress view, 3D transitions of all kinds of beautiful things. Yes, we even have some bugs as well. So, but getting the high priority regressions down to almost nothing and getting our regressions flat. Liberating your documents. So, ODF obviously helps you liberate your documents if you can already load them and transfer to that. But, there's all these old people, Word Pro, Word Perfect, Abbey Word, Keynote, the next Keynote format. Apple keeps changing its formats in incompatible, undocumented ways. Visio. Better Visio, Microsoft Publisher. Absolutely loads of these things out there, right? I gave up in 2016. Oh, cloud stuff. So connecting to cloud things, Alfresco integration, eGroupware integration for our online version of LibreOffice. Colab, Nextcloud, OwnCloud, Pydio, Roove, Mattermost. Well, so why do I show you all these things? Because all of these things represent years, man-decades, tens of man-decades of work, okay? 20s of man, 30s of man-decades of work. And one of the problems we have as engineers is that we think if we make the software better, they will come, If you build a better mousetrap, people will buy it. And I still believe that, If you look at how I invest my own personal money, it's in software development. My time is in software development. But actually, here's the tragedy. It took 5 years. So most of the features I just showed you there were already in LibreOffice, and yet still more people were downloading something that fundamentally hasn't changed in any feature function way since it was launched. So this is the OpenOffice trend line, right? And Google cannot lie. This is hard data from loads and loads of searches, and so. Actually, all that branding that we built in the first 10 years of OpenOffice took a huge amount of effort to turn into, something positive and open and, community-driven and so on, that actually works, and get our brand to the point where people can see it. And that's a little bit concerning. It's a bit concerning. And we still have 250,000 downloads a week of something that is a museum of office productivity. Which is a great shame. It's disappointing users. It's fair enough to have museums. It's good. It's good. I love to visit them. It's interesting. But it disappoints users.
and it gives them a bad image of what free software can do and the dynamism and excitement that's possible there. And so I think there's two things there. This is pretty shameful, and it should be fixed, and we've tried really hard to do that. But also that the brand is really important. Branding really matters. The equity you're putting into that name. You know, and my friends still say OpenOffice by mistake from time to time. It's one of these cognitive slips that, that just sort of happens. And it's a shame. So it's very easy to think it's about the code, about the features. But actually, branding, trademark, ecosystem, investment are almost more important. It's sad to say it, but economics drives almost everything. So you can see the graph here of commits. Companies are doing nearly 3/4 of the commits in LibreOffice, and they're awesome. We love all of our ecosystem. But yeah, that's pretty frightening. They're, of course, mentoring much of the rest of the quarter as well, right? So how do you do that? And one of the problems is that LibreOffice has a brand, and that brand drives people to a non-profit foundation, which is wonderful. But how can you then encourage people to invest in that? How can you give them a stake in that and a viable business? Currently, something like 0.12% of people that hit the LibreOffice webpage even discover there are professional services around it. Okay? So almost all of them donate something and download, which is great. But yeah, how can you build that thriving ecosystem such that this graph begins to be slightly similar to this graph? Or at least close. And as you see, we're making progress. I think it's gone up from 0.05% to 0.12% in the last year. So there you go. Anyway, people are downloading it. The good news is we have, I don't know, 1,800,000 downloads a week, which is encouraging, and certainly, in the right ballpark, and going upwards, which we like, although heavily seasonal. And of course, interestingly, it's a business product that people use. So at the weekend, it drops off, and at Christmas. Yeah, donations seem to be going in the right direction. And this is a huge strength. We're just so grateful to our 64,000 donors who each gave, $8 each or whatever to help us run the foundation, or $12 each or whatever it is. That's really cool, absolutely cool. So here we are. I'm supposed to inveigh on the future, and this is the very risky part. Who knows? I'm convinced the future is a rocket ship, so there we go. But who can predict the future? So you can listen to your users and see what they want. Here's a selection. Everything is going to move to the web and go online. Everything else will be totally ignored. It'll all be in the browser. The next quote's from the same person. Oh, it's just so cool. I can download the app and run it natively on my Chromebook. I wish we could fix the bugs in that. You're like, really? Interesting. And this is a strategy, people are sensible. I respect their view, right? I want to collaborate on my mobile phone, So phone's obviously the future. I want to be able to load and edit docs offline, I want to be able to use the in-network when there is no network, all those sort of other things. It seems clear to me that the obvious solution is to create an artificial intelligence of stunning subtlety and conversational brilliance that can see what we should be doing at every point. So if you'd like to help join us and do that, that's great. The other great way I have of predicting the future is telling you what's already done and just pending release. So there's a whole load of cool stuff in Collabora Online. It allows collaborative editing of documents on your premise. You own it. Digital sovereignty. No control to anyone else. So nice sidebar stuff coming here on the right to make the UI richer. Things that no one else does, transitions, animations, and so on. Just prettiness coming. Editing master pages for your presentation online. I don't think anyone else does this. It's too advanced a feature. Managing conditional formats, rich dialogues to do that, prettier UI, formula wizards. Just cool color correcting your images in your documents and so on. Better handles for resizing, for spreadsheet stuff, URL pop-ups, and so on. And of course, the mobile version 2 has had a completely new one-handed UI rework. So this is you can download this as Collabora Online Mobile Beta, and it's improving very rapidly. It looks familiar to people, I hope. But again, you can do cool things in there you can't do. Actually, we're just taking the sidebar and wrapping this and redoing that as native JavaScript widgets. So you can get lots of cool functionality there. iOS versions for tablets, and of course, they work on Android too. So that's, I think, partly the future. More mobile, more online, more richness, but all reusing that same core code base that's got 35 years of awesome work underneath it, underpinning that, and some really good functionality. So we'd love people to get involved. We have easy hacks. We've paid a lot of technical debt down, but there's lots more to do. If you love JavaScript, after you've seen your doctor, you can come and help us. It's a challenging and exciting language. But we have plenty of JavaScript that needs doing. C++, UX design, there's all sorts of things. Whatever your skills are, we would love to work with you. Come and talk to me. User experience, I think, is one of the things that we really need to be working on more. It's one of those never quite done things. But there are still loads of paper cuts there. There is a UX team that meet. They have things they'd love to do. They're specified. They have lush artwork for it. But they just need a couple of programmers to help them do the simple typing to make this work. And then, of course, when you change the UI, the documentation needs updating. So I think I'm almost in time. So I think that's pretty much the story of LibreOffice, OpenOffice, maybe a bit about StarOffice. The StarOffice times I was not there. I'm afraid I only joined at the very end of StarOffice and talked to the OpenOffice people, so I could be there at the launch and help this GNOME OpenOffice compromise. But we did what we had to make the code base survive. And just the sheer number of people that did things there way exceeds my ability to write all their names down in the taxi while I was coming here, which is when I finished much of the slides. But thank you for all of the work from those people there. I think a key thing is that our digital sovereignty is really important. If you look at China collects your data in order to control you and to oppress you, probably, or to maintain social stability with the right people at the top is perhaps a positive construction. America, of course, gathers your data to sell you things. So a different way of looking at data. And of course, the European Union has a chance to have a different path where we help drive and teach the world about the importance of guarding and controlling not only your software, but also your data, keeping it on your premise, controlling it yourself, and we really enable that. And I am excited. It's not just us. Of course, we do the Office collaborative piece, but I've shown you some of the integrations we have, the partners. There are great tools and products. Let me encourage you to work on those and help move people towards protecting themselves, their sovereignty, and arguably their society in the long run. So we need your help. Come and help us make it better. It's some challenging, fulfilling work. I love it. I'm still doing it, 10 years in, 20 years in, and it's cool. Really, we'd love to have that. And beyond that, we rely on your support. Maybe you never contributed anything to LibreOffice, but we love the fact that you tell your friends about it, that you help us with our branding problem, that you keep us alive and you turn up and listen to this sort of nonsense. So thank you. Thank you for your support. It's greatly appreciated. And you've been very good, So if we can have a few questions, I think you have plenty of time to get to the next talk. That is the first thing to say. I have finished ridiculously early. There's 20 minutes, and then something else will happen. So you can rest and relax.
Okay, we have a question, Michael?
Or ask questions. That's fantastic. Oh, I'll get some water.
Well, thanks, Michael, for a great talk. I would like to hear maybe a little bit more about the certification. Are the Document Foundation happy with the current state of the certification? Would you like to see more certifications exam and maybe partner up with Linux Professional Institute so you can take them both together? I don't know.
Cool. So I think we discovered earlier the acoustics are not wonderful in here for questions, but I think you said you want more certification and Linux Professional Institute certification exams and so on. We'd love that. Anyone that can help contribute is good. Our certification currently is primarily focused on professionals to help grow our ecosystem and get more companies and individuals to contribute to and improve the project. So end user certification is not what we're doing really. But we'd love other people to do that. Talk to Italo, he's here and he runs, or Lothar Becker is here, go to a booth and chat to them. If you have good ideas and you can help, we'd love it. Good idea. So.
Hi, I'm Alex. First, many thanks for the LibreOffice suite. Like it's great. Still, like I have two questions. The first one is, do you still have trouble with the lack of documentation for Microsoft's format, like the newer ones and their supportability? That's the first thing. And the second thing is, what do you see is your greatest competition? Is it still Microsoft Office or the Google Documents ecosystem, or is that an opportunity to grow?
Yeah, so two good questions. The first was about OpenXML and documentation and interoperability. So I think our interoperability is outstanding and improving. I don't think there's any other code base that does as well as we do in terms of allowing you to view and understand and edit those documents. Look, these are very old code bases. Microsoft calls its source code legacy rich, and I think that's a positive framing. The documentation is pretty good. It's usually not the documentation that's the problem, it's the time spent to implement the feature. Because it's no good. If you don't have the feature, you can't interoperate terribly easily. So that was that. And then in terms of your other question, which was competition. Who's our competition? Well, I hope people are aware of who's out there producing software. But I think, clearly Microsoft is the big beast in the room. In terms of the desktop product. In terms of the online product, I think, there are all sorts of market niches. Digital sovereignty is a great niche to be in. People who care about having their data under control, lawyers, professionals in all sorts of spheres, medicine and so on, who don't want to be handing out your data to someone else. So I think there's some great niches there, and yeah, obviously we compete with everyone that makes an Office suite. But I'm excited about what's going on. So,
hi. Do you ever work with the developers of OpenOffice or NeoOffice? Do you talk with them or collaborate?
So they're friends of mine. Well, to some degree, like the NeoOffice people, I think still exist. I haven't talked to Patrick and Ed for a long time, but our Mac builds are now pretty capable. So they're cool. And yeah, of course we talk to the OpenOffice people to try and resolve the the divide whenever we can. Yeah. I mean, what can you do? I think there are all sorts of really positive stories we can tell if we can encourage the users to use something that's better. So, yeah, yeah. So come and see me if you're involved with Apache and have good ideas. Good question. One more? Two more?
Any questions so far?
Anything at all? Well, in which case, you've been extremely good and well behaved. Thank you so much. Have a great day.